everybody. Welcome to the Unscripted conference. I am Bob Chen, so I will be discussing my topic today of CICD, Conscience of Uncoupling. So a quick intro in terms of who I am, what's my name? My name is Bob Chen. Where I currently work, I'm currently the Director of DevOps at ADP. What do I know about DevOps? I know absolutely nothing, to be honest with you. I just know building leading global DevOps and SR team for the last 6 years. I've been with a number of companies, both large and small, as well as startups. What I do at ADP, I work with a bunch of smart DevOps superstars, along with technology with three-letter acronyms that I really don't know what it is. I've been told about AWS, EKS, EC2, SQS, SNS, RDS, and a bunch of others that really I have difficulty pronouncing. Right. What do people say about me? Kind of just let you know who I am as well is, according to a SurveyMonkey that was kind of sent out to my DevOps teams that I lead, the result is very overwhelming that I'm the most useless person on the team and I know absolutely nothing. But I'm serious. You can go ask them. I'll give you their contact info, and you can ask them. All right, let's kind of go into terms of what is CICD and just kind of laying it out. This is really my definition of CICD. Everybody has their own definition, similar to DevOps, right? That everybody has their own definition of DevOps. But for me personally, CI is continuous integration, right? Well, I consider it build. Usually, what's under CI is you got unit testing, code quality scans, your compilation, artifact creation. CD is continuous delivery. The deployment aspect, you're deploying to your non-production environments, your testing and validation of your application, performance testing, and deployment to production. So, CICD, the infamous C family of integration and delivery. Many folks use tools such as Jenkins, there's Circle CI, but a lot of folks do use what you traditionally see use Jenkins for CI and CD. A single workflow acting as a single pipeline, which is what you see down in the image below. This method has worked very great for eons. So why discuss this? And we'll kind of go through what our thinking has been in terms of CI/CD and pipelines, right? What we did at ADP was, conscious uncoupling. What is that? Would you say? It is really the split of CI and CD from a single pipeline, right, into multiple pipelines and workflows, right? Essentially, you're using a CI tool specifically for build and a tool specifically for deployment. So you don't have a single tool that is supporting your integration and your deployment, right? This also removes the single point of failure from where build and deployment, if there's any issues with that tool, is completely down. Now, obviously, if you can say the same thing with two tools. If one tool has an issue, then that specific function is completely down, but your other isn't, right? I come from an operations background, so for me, high availability and redundancy is pretty key, and that's why our design usually centers around not having a single point of failure. Now, to continue on, if you can see, we have two different pipelines here, one for CI and one for CD. This model mentality really behind conscious uncoupling is really modularity and simplicity. So we really take that to heart, right? Each CI, CD will have their own pipeline with individual workflows within the section of the pipelines that you'll see here. We'll dive a little bit more into that in detail. CI really has specific tasks with its own pipeline that's really geared towards build, right? And that's really what you want to do. CD is the same thing, right? Specific workflows for within each environment, within the whole pipeline, right? So you have multiple workflows within that pipeline for each in the individual environment. And then you can see it here. So let's dive into this a little bit, right? CI. What you see here is our process, what we have from left to right is first step, obviously, everybody does this, right? This process is pretty well known to the universe. If it's not, then obviously you're gonna learn about it right now. The first step is obviously you're gonna have your pull requests, commits that trigger the CI pipeline. with unit tests being the initial step. And that usually would happen at, let's just say you're using GitHub or Bitbucket. And you're not doing pull requests. For commits and you're just doing direct commits, highly recommend you stop. Just do PRs. That way you can have some safety in terms of your process when you're committing code. So that way you're double checking your code or somebody is reviewing it. Second step, you usually would then have some sort of code quality scan the minute unit test is completed and the minute you actually send it up to the CI pipeline, right? The first thing you'll want to do is scan it with a tool like Qualys or Veracode just to ensure your code quality is good, no issues. Then obviously you build your code, right? You build your artifact at that point. And then if you're a containerized environment, the next step you would do is actually then containerize your environment and commit the artifact or the container to your container repository. Additional steps a lot of folks would do and are starting to do is actually scanning your artifact or your container post-compilation, right? To ensure that you are secure and you're putting in security mindset with your CI pipeline, right? A lot of things we're trying to do these days is security is a very, 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 very critical and serious topic these days. So you want to make sure all your pipelines have security mind built into it. So, code quality scan is one. And then definitely vulnerability scanning is another, right? Scanning your artifact and your containers. Now, any failure within this pipeline, this halt the whole process and it does stop the pipeline and you want to then trigger an alert. Whether that sends it to your chat system, or some chatbot alert via email, alert via PagerDuty, whatever you want. You do want this to trigger and stop the whole process, alert somebody, they can review it, and then start the whole process over again. You don't start midway. You do really restart, fix the changes you need to fix, and then submit another PR again. Next step, obviously, is CD. If we really think about it, the way we visualize the CI/CD pipeline is CI is really about 30% about the whole process. CD is the 70%. And really, if you think about it, CD is the meat of the whole CI/CD process, really because a lot of more action is done there. Now, what do we do with our CD pipelines is we leverage templatized workflows. We try to templatize as much as we can for specific, language deployments and so forth. We try to automate our verification test as well as security scanning. So I'm gonna kind of stop there real quick and then start from our process, let you know how we start. Is at the minute the artifact or container is built, sent over to the repository and scanned, there is then a trigger and a tag that gets added to the artifact. Once the tag is added to the artifact, right, this triggers our CD tool to do the deployment. Our CD tool are always monitoring the specific repos or new artifacts or new containers with a specific tag. When they see it, they trigger it. Our first thing is the dev deployment, right? So we'll automatically deploy to dev. It runs some smoke tests, automated smoke tests to validate that everything is good. Then right there, we have an approval gate. And this is really, you can actually have it fully automated or have an approval gate. We have some teams with automation approval gates, just because there you have enough automated tests to ensure that they are confident enough for this to move on to the next environment. But at this moment, we have some teams that do that and some teams that don't. For the teams that don't, there is an approval gate where somebody will review to ensure that the code is functioning as is, and it is what they want before they pass it off to the QA team, right? Otherwise, the QA team throws it back at them, then there's going to be an issue, and we're going to have a discussion with the dev about it, right? So they review it. If it's not an automated approval gate, then they approve it. It goes to QA, deploys to the QA environment. So the deployment is the template, right? Our deployment and the actual QA deployment are the same. So those are templated with environment variables that are that are just modified within config management. So once it's in QA, it will then execute initial smoke tests as well as also automated and functional tests and feature tests that QA has created. If they're not automated, then obviously an actual person will have to go in and validate that feature themselves. So that will then either go through another approval gate where it's automated or manual. Obviously, manual is like dev. Somebody will do a review, see the QA results, and then approve it. Then comes staging. A lot of action is actually taken at staging because of how much is being done in staging. The test that is run in staging a lot more laborious and a lot more rigor is put into it, right? So if you kind of see what we do, we actually have performance verification with APM and our monitoring systems integrated into our deployment. So our CD tool actually is monitoring and interacting with our APM when we do performance tests or regression tests, right? To see if our latency for specific URI endpoints are above our threshold or below. Some of our microservice pipelines or workflows does also have logging integrated with it as well. So our CD tool can check for errors and alert and stop and so forth. Now, bear in mind, up to this point, any of those environments can be stopped. But if it's stopped, what is different from CI compared to CD is we don't start back at the beginning unless it does require a code change, and then we'll start back at the beginning and go back to CI. What we will do is then debug, right? Our CD tool logs all the console output, so we can actually go in and review our data. Everything is integrated to our monitoring platform, so we can review all our data there and troubleshoot to see if there's any environmental issues or if there's any data issues by environment, and determine if it's something that we can fix, and then re-trigger the deployment for that specific environment. So a lot of the workflows can be re-triggered just for that specific environment rather than having to go through the whole process. Now, why am I discussing that? I'm discussing it really because if you look at what I discussed in the prior slide about a single pipeline of how people typically create their CI/CD workflows and pipelines, it's a single pipeline. You have to run through the whole thing if something fails, right? The reason why we break this up is because when that occurs when you uncouple it, you don't have to actually start from the whole CI process again. You can literally in the CD pipeline start from where you stop and where you left off. So that's there's some power and controllability to that when you break that apart. You actually can save a little bit of time not having to restart again when you need to redeploy and trigger the whole workflow again. And depending on obviously what you have, that workflow can't be in tune of 30 minutes to an hour, depending on your process. So when we're running performance tests, as I mentioned, we're doing our APM tests and so forth. We also can also trigger our QA, I wouldn't say QA, but our security tests, right? Our vulnerability scans, right? A lot of tools like Qualys, you can make an API call out to them, and then they can fire off, vulnerability tests or security scan tests against your environment. So you can do that here. We do that as well. Some are automated, some are not. It all depends on your preference. But what you do see here is modularized for that. And production deployment, obviously, when we get to deployment, our CD tools support multiple deployment models, right? A lot of the times we definitely do we do a lot of blue-green deployments, right? That supports zero downtime on that. And also you can do step-up deployments as well to slowly roll out your application code to multiple containers, right? If you're doing containers, right? So failures will stop the deployment process and automatically roll back as well in all environments. So if there is a failure or a health check fails, our actual deployment tool does automatically roll back and fail back to the previous working code. Highly recommend it if you don't have that, because what that does is it always keep your environment up and online. So that way, if folks are interacting with it, especially in the microservices architecture, is very critical, because the services being consumed by a lot of other services. So if your service is down, that means you impact other people's verification or their deployment processes as well, because the deployments are pretty much working in sync, right? Every deployment for every microservice is on their own runway, so they can be deploying at their own cadence, and you don't want to impact them, right? So the last point obviously is deployment can take place into any environment and if required. So if you look at it, there's a hotfix need to go into Dev and QA if that is running your next release code, right? You want it to deploy into staging where it mimics production, so you can validate it right away. A lot of folks also have multiple Dev and QA environments as well as staging. We actually try to minimize the amount of infrastructure and the amount of overhead and maintenance on that. So there are ways to share the single runways with multiple teams and multiple services, and that's kind of what we do here. So kind of want to call that out as well. So on to the next slide. What did we get really out of unconscious uncoupling and the improvements we got? Obviously, we had a lot more focus on code quality and security, right? We are focusing on code quality, definitely on the CI pipeline, and security on the CD pipeline as well as CI. Now, obviously, you don't need to uncouple to do that. You can actually do it all in a single pipeline as well. It's just that in a single pipeline, it takes a very long time to go through that. So if something breaks or you have a security bug, you have to restart all over again rather than starting off from midway or a specific point when you fix the issue, depending if the issue can be fixed here or it needs to be fixed at the code level, which will restart. Approval gates with automated deployments upon test automation. When we broke this up, we added more approval gates as well as a lot more automated deployments. Of course, you can do that in a single pipeline as well. What we did have integrated with ours as well in terms of adding improvements on top of what we had is when we broke up our CI/CD pipelines, is we added definitely with CD a lot more monitoring and logging interaction between our CD tool as well as our APM tools. Previously, when we did it, with Jenkins, right, in a single pipeline, you don't really have that integrated into the deployment areas of the pipeline. So we added that here. Our CD tool does do that. It gives us a lot more visibility as well to debug and to troubleshoot. What we did is also created a more simple interface for developers and QA. So QA will focus purely on the CD pipeline, and developers will focus purely on the CI pipeline, and obviously they can also focus on the CD pipeline as well. With our CD tool, we were able to segregate secrets and config management and isolate that more, put a little bit more rigor and security around it. And also deployments actually doesn't have any secrets exposed. So if you look in the deployment, our console outputs have actually secrets hashed and encrypted, so you won't be able to see it. We have full audit logs for any of our actions taken, whether it's manual or automated within the CD pipeline, as well as obviously in CD. But one thing I do say that, previously we didn't have a lot of audit or logs for audit purposes, or even just to review to see what actions were taken in our previous workflow on pipeline. Now, do we actually have logs? Yes, we do have logs, but they're also quite hefty and difficult to search and comb through. So when we uncoupled it, our CD tool actually has that capability. So we actually did integrate it and utilize all that features. Our CD tool also has, we add a lot of dashboarding and reporting and monitoring into our deployments. So we're all constantly monitoring our dashboard to see how many deployments are being triggered. We're looking at reports to see how what we're doing to determine if we are actually improving our deployments or actually not improving our deployments. we actually do get a report in terms of how long every deployment takes, how long each microservice takes to deploy and verify and review those and determine if we have ways, opportunities to improve, right, and reduce our deployment times, right. Obviously, we do implement as much RBAC or as much permissioning as we can in our CI pipeline. And in our CD pipeline, there's full RBAC. So every person that needs to interact with that tool only has access to that specific service they're responsible for, as well as only have access to what they need. So if they only need to deploy to specific environments, they can only access that specific environment, debug that specific environment, and actually interact with that specific environment. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility. The devs, the QAs, the PMs all have a little bit less to contend with when they log in. Instead of seeing everything, they see exactly what they need to do. And from a PM perspective, they essentially are usually only going in to approve and review. So they just go and see what approvals they have to do, and they approve their pipelines. So that is a lot of what we did in terms of when we uncoupled our CI and CD pipelines. And end result was we had a lot of flexibility in our CI/CD process. We modularized everything. Certain areas in the pipeline where that can easily be modified with minimal impact to the whole environment and the whole pipeline. So just think about every aspect of your CI/CD, and you want to modularize it, right? Think of it like your code. You want to be able to pull it in and out, or make changes whenever you can without minimizing the impact to your whole pipeline, right? New steps can be developed and added because of the modularity, right? Templates allow us to get new services up and running faster, allows us to react to engineering changes and requests a lot faster. And we leverage a lot of config management as well as tagging. Tagging is very, very key. You want to tag as much as you can on your artifacts, on your monitoring, your APM, everything that you can, tag as much as you can. The more tagging you have, the easier it is for you to find structure and break out within your CI/CD or within your monitoring tool. And that is the end of my presentation. I really thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully everybody is staying safe. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.